In the Nicene Creed, we talk about the church being one, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. This last adjective, apostolic, isn't there purely by coincidence. When we look to the earliest days of the church, we find a not only apostolic community, but an evangelistic community. When we look to Acts as an example, what we're seeing are the bright luminaries of the church, of the bright luminaries of our early evangelical efforts. We see St. Peter, who broke down all sorts of barriers so that people were able to join the Christian church. And we see St. Paul, who went far and wide to bring the gospel to people who may not have heard much more than Judaism exists, let alone anything about Christ. We hear about these luminaries. One of the reasons that the Christian church was 10% of the Roman Empire by the year 300. This is before it was legal. One of the reasons that it was 10% of the empire was not the luminaries. They made things possible. They were trailblazers. What we had was everyone. The gospel is shared, not so much by trailblazers, but by the quote-unquote little people. By each person having news that's too good to keep for yourself. Having news that's too good to keep quiet, because we want everyone to share in this light that we have been given. And so that's why it is that evangelism is a part of the fabric of our church, and we can't take this away from it. A church without evangelism is simply no church at all. Because that's what it is to be church. That's what it is to be apostolic, to be sent into a world that needs us so desperately. The evangelism that occurred in the first few centuries was one done under persecution. And it was one done with great difficulty and travail. You had some people like St. Paul who would go for great distances in order to spread the gospel to the people there. You had the apostles, and in our tradition, in what has been handed down to us through history, we have the 12 apostles who gathered together and they divided up the known world. And so each apostle had a responsibility for a place. Thomas, for example, went to India. Mark went to Egypt, to North Africa. Matthew went further south to Ethiopia, and so on and so forth. This same fervor we can see continued through the Christian church. With apostles, firstly, apostles of the 12 and the 70, and then we have people who are called equals to the apostles. St. Nina of Georgia, for example, and countless others, enlighteners of various places. This is a tradition that has had challenges throughout the centuries, mostly because of domination by external political forces. It's had troubles because of being under the domination of a foreign religion, a foreign government that imposed a tax on people who wished to remain Christians. The focus was less on evangelism and more simply on survival. The same problem was under those who were under the yoke of communism. Just in the last century, and in that time, more martyrs were given than in the prior history of the church to that date. Evangelism was made very challenging, if not impossible, because survival was the option that was available to people. Yet nonetheless, despite these two great problems, we have this line where evangelism took place. Firstly, in the Roman Empire, and then expanding beyond that. It took all the way from starting in Jerusalem. It went east to India, south to Ethiopia, north even as far as Kiev, and west. West, we know that the 12 took this to Spain. We know that the 70 went so far as England. And this grew and it developed, going north from the Mediterranean and going everywhere else as well. We celebrate the evangelization of the Slavs and their baptism in 988. Yet it was a century prior to that Cyril and Methodius, those great saints, were sent from Constantinople to those northern lands. From there, from the far west of Russia, from the far west of those lands, the gospel spread eastward across that time, until eventually it found its way to Alaska. Then from Alaska, it likewise spread down and through North America. This has been an unbroken line of evangelism, one that we are joyful to continue today, not only in places that we may expect, although there as well we see countless being received into the church and being a joyous, vibrant church in sub-Saharan Africa. We've seen mass conversions to Orthodox Christianity from a variety of groups, whether led by Saint Alexis Toth in the 1800s, or whether led by Father Peter Gilchrist in 1988 with the Evangelical Orthodox, whether the group in England, the group who were disaffected by ways that Christ's teaching had been diluted, and so they sought refuge in the church that Christ founded, and many other movements beside in Guatemala and beyond. There have been many that are seeking for the church that Christ founded. There are many that are seeking for this, the Orthodox Church, including right here, right in this, our nation, Australia. There are many who are seeking for truth if they only knew where to find it. There are many who are seeking for what Christ taught if they only knew who preached it. And so this is where we come in. It's not so that we can say someone else will do it. It's not. The responsibility is not on professional Christians, whoever they may be. The responsibility is on those who follow Christ to look for opportunities in our everyday life. Sometimes that we find a false dichotomy between becoming holy and sharing the gospel. The answer is both. We both strive towards God, and we strive to bring as many people as possible into that same light that we are seeking to follow. Christ is a body of the servant of God, subject and here and now, so forgiveness of sins and eternal life.